Many of you know that for the past few years I've been learning a particular commentary on the Torah, the Kli Yakar, by Rabbi Shlomo Ephraim Lunchitz, who was the chief rabbi of Prague from 1604 to 1619. This year, my chavruta, Professor Shalom Goldman, he and I are starting a new commentator. So you'll hear me teaching something else finally. Isaac Barbanel, a Portuguese Jewish philosopher, statesman, financier, and biblical commentator. Barbanel was born in 1437 in Lisbon, Portugal, after his illustrious family fled the massacre or pogroms of Castile in 1391, one of the worst outbreaks of anti-Semitic violence in the Middle Ages, after which, facing death, many Jews converted en masse to Christianity. Barbanel fled Spain after the Spanish Inquisition and died in 1508 in Venice. His commentary is not structured like Rashi's with short comments. Rather, he picks a verse or two and then lays out many questions, and then he answers each of those questions in succession before moving on to another verse or passage. This week, I learned that following the tradition, we studied the passage about the snake and the speaking snake. And following the tradition of the Spanish Maimonidean rationalists, Barbanel argues that the snake never really spoke to Eve. The Torah has a way of telling you when animals miraculously speak. It says when the donkey speaks to Bilam, the Torah says specifically God opened the mouth of the donkey and the donkey spoke, but that's never explicitly stated in the Garden of Eden. Rather, when the Torah says that the snake spoke, Barbanel explains that the craftiness of the snake was that it crawled up and down on the tree, and it acted in ways such that it was speaking to Eve, creating within Eve an inner dialogue, and that's what we have recorded in the Torah. I've been thinking a lot about that image that Eve watches the world around her, and it creates within her an inner dialogue that is as real to her as audible voices. Since last Shabbat, we have watched a horror unfold. A massacre of babies, children, of whole families, of elderly, of people with special needs. On TV and social media this week, we stared at pictures of abducted children. The Jewish inner voice gave a name to what we were witnessing because we filtered it through the lens of our history and memory. Many Jews heard that internal voice and said, this is a pogrom. It's the worst day of anti-Jewish violent hate since the Holocaust, and it whispered into our ears, you are not safe. One of the kids who worked for me at Ramah, she's no longer a kid. She's a grown woman, a VP at an Israeli tech company, Mobileye, and a mom with a family of her own living in Jerusalem. She wrote to me, this was a failure of the whole idea of Israel. I can't wrap my head around Shoah-level atrocities inside Israel proper. This is why we have Israel. No more pogroms. And how will we get up from the grief? This has been an excruciating week for American Jews for so many reasons. Although we do not live in Israel, for most Jews around the world, part of Israel's significance after the trauma of centuries and generations of anti-Semitic persecution that culminated with the Shoah, Israel's existence was supposed to whisper into our ears, the Jewish people can defend ourselves. The Jewish people are safe. And this week's events whispered to us, you are not. What else did we see this week? Even before all the bodies were buried, we and our children were peppered with internet memes and marchers in cities all over the world. Israel is a colonialist project. Students for Justice in Palestine at UNC stated, and I quote, "It is our moral obligation to be in solidarity with the dispossessed, no matter the pathway to liberation they take. This includes violence. After all, no colonized people have ever achieved their freedom by appealing to the morality of their oppressors. Colonialism itself is everyday violence, degradation, and erasure." The charge that Israel is a colonialist project is dangerous for a lot of reasons, but it is here that I see it is a lens that when you place it over your eyes, it turns reality on its head. According to the statement that I just read, beheading children, raping women, killing the elderly is not only morally acceptable, it's morally obligated. We saw these memes. We watched these demonstrations. Perhaps most painfully, we witnessed the silent assent of some of our closest allies and educators and political leaders. And we heard a voice in our head, and the voice said, "Nobody understands what it is to be a Jew." For what we most deeply desire is to be known and accepted in our full selves. And for most Jews around the world, that means with an understanding that Israel, while complicated and flawed, is not only a refuge, it's a vital part of the Jewish story. We do not look at Israel and see ourselves as colonialists. We see Israel as home, where our story is and where it has unfolded and where we have desired to return for thousands of years. And the people who were savagely murdered this week, they are family, literally. What else did we see this week? We saw the beginning, but only the beginning of the destruction of Gaza. We saw, and we will see, Palestinian civilians injured and dying and fleeing. We saw neighborhoods leveled, and we saw lines of tanks and plane loads of Israeli reservists flying back to defend their country in what is going to be a brutal, horrible, devastating war. That Israel has to win, but in which countless thousands of people will lose. And in our heads, what voices do we hear? There is a part of me that simply falls silent. I am numb. I'm dead inside. I feel unliftable. darkness and heaviness. I can't find the tears. I can't get it out of me. It is a terrible, silent weight. So I look at the world and I hear a voice of silence. I look at the destroyed buildings and the helpless people, and I beg, plead in my heart, is there no other way? But we watched the beginning of the utter destruction in Gaza, and there's a voice that also says what you saw last Saturday was a pogrom. And if, God forbid, Hamas were to take over all of Israel, not just for a few hours and not just in the south, that's what they would do. Every Jew and every inhabitant in the state of Israel who don't agree with their murderous ideology. We see Palestinian hospitals overflowing, or hear the news that Israel has imposed a conditional siege, cutting off water and electricity until the hostages are free. And a voice inside me asks, how do we do this? How do we fight an immoral enemy without becoming immoral? And that's a devastating challenge that faces the state of Israel, that faces the soldiers. And I'm humbled. I'm humbled because I live 7,000 miles away in the safety of the United States, which is vast and has oceans around it. When Jennifer and the boys and I lived in Israel, I played basketball each week with a guy named John Poland. John and his wife Rachel and I have continued to get to know each other over the past many years as they would come to Israel to spend the holiday with their extended family at the Ramah Passover Institute, Ramah Durham Passover Institute. And John and Rachel's son is named Hirsch. And Hirsch had his arm blown off by a grenade. And they know now that he tied a tourniquet on it with his shirt, and he's a hostage in Gaza. And his mom said on the news, if his arm gets infected, he will die. We know that. And the voices in my head ask me, what choices do we have if we want Hirsch to live? How can we not do terrible, awful things if we want Hirsch and the 85-year-old grandmother that we all saw in the golf cart and the concert goers and the whole families, if we want them returned by a ruthless enemy that seems willing to let 2 million people of Gaza suffer rather than return the hostages? And the voice inside my head, I hear myself asking, why is this necessary? And why, oh God, is there so much pain and suffering in your world? And I plead inside the words of the Psalm, Ana Adonai, please, God, Hoshea na, save, please. At the end of the week, I sent out a last-minute note to some local clergy, many of whom have called and emailed and texted, sharing messages of love and solidarity, both personally on behalf of their communities And I asked them to come today, and some of them were able to make it. And I want to ask if you are here from another congregation to please rise so we can welcome you and bless your presence in our midst. Be seated. When I emailed you and asked you to come, I admit that I didn't know exactly why, or what this moment might look like, or how it might unfold. I think there was a piece of me that was just selfish and needed to see your faces. In the Torah portion this week, we read about how human beings are created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. One rabbi said that we're forbidden from making graven images, but the reason for that is that there's already an image of God in the world. It's the unique face of every human being. But I realize that I didn't just need to see your faces, and I didn't just need for our community to see you, to see your faces. I needed and we needed to see your faces seeing us. For when we see you seeing us, we hear a different voice in our heads from the ones that we've been hearing all week. We don't just hear you're not safe. We don't just hear nobody understands us. We don't just hear numb silence. We don't just hear how can we do this or not do this, or God, why is there so much pain and suffering in your world? We look at your faces seeing us, and we see you coming to bear witness to the agony and pain and vulnerability and confusion. We see you walk past the police presence, which is necessary to guard us in our place of worship. And I hear a different voice in my head. And I want our community to hear that voice too. It's a voice that says, you are seen in your fullness as a Jew. Not as a human being, just, not as all innocent people, as a Jew. The voice says, you are loved. The voice says, you are held and comforted. The voice says, you are not alone. And even for just for a moment, it feels like the sunrise at dawn. God creates the world this week, and when she does, the earth was wild and waste. Darkness was over the face of the deep. That was the week. Wild and waste. Darkness over the face of an abyss. But the story doesn't end there. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light. And there was light, and God saw the light, and it was good. And you, my friends, are echoes of a primordial light. I hope everybody remembers over the next few weeks and months, we are not going to solve the problems of the Middle East in Durham, North Carolina. But what happens there threatens to rip us apart. And maybe, just maybe here, with God's help, we can partner with God in the work of creation. We can do so by witnessing the divine image in each other, by standing with each other in the fullness of our different identities as Christians, as Muslims, and we as Jews, many of whose hearts are bound with those of our brothers and sisters gathered in the state of Israel so far away. I pray we can strengthen one another, that we can give to each other a little of God's hope, and that we may know the Lord's day when nation will not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore. And let us say,